is because you put yourself in such a small box that you forget you have access to all that is. But the mind has to be trained into breaking down the mental barriers that create the limitation of who we think we can be. Because if you accepted yourself as God created you, you're created in the image of God. You are exactly as God, except you did not create yourself. God created you. So that once that's established, the little mouse of clay did not make itself. It comes from the clay. So once we get honest enough to accept, okay, God created me, then comes the part of, then what am I? This is why we ask those questions. Oftentimes they say that happens in midlife, but it's happening earlier and earlier now because of the frequency of the planet and the frequency of consciousness of more people. We're no longer tolerating these lies that attempt to bring us down into a small idea of who we are. This chart explains it better. We are all that is, and we spiral, we wind ourselves down to a tiny mad idea, crazy idea, as the Course calls it, that you are less than how you are as God created you. And we create a life with that understanding. Well, there's going to be a lot of suffering involved because you don't believe you can be healthy enough. If your mom had cancer and you've been conditioned to believe that cancer, mom had it, you're going to get it, then you are accepting that's the lineage in your family. I stopped about 10 years ago when I began to understand this. I remember going to a gynecological appointment and I hadn't been there in a couple of years. So I had to fill out new forms and I'm filling out my forms and give me the history of your mother and your father's illnesses. And I was like, NA, not applicable. And when I went in and had my meeting with a nurse, she says, what does this mean? I said, I do not claim anything that my parents had. So do not look at me as somebody who can potentially get what my mother or my grandmother had, because that is not my reality. Of course, they looked at me a little crazy, and that was okay. I knew I was becoming saner inside, but to them, of course, I sounded crazy because I wasn't participating in the conditioning that formed the reality that most people are inside of. So we got to pull ourselves out of that belief system. And of course, there were lots of other beliefs I started breaking from. And yeah, I was considered cray-cray for a very long time. But so what? For a while, I was woo-woo. And then to everybody else, I was cuckoo. Who cares what label people put on me? I knew who I was because I was accepting the truth of who I am as God created me. I was learning to be under no laws but God's.